Have you ever wondered why the names we hear over and over again? Those billionaires splashed across magazine covers and documentaries aren't the only ones building empires? Why some of the wealthiest, wisest, and most innovative minds remain in the shadows? 'Cause not all billionaires crave attention. Some don't build their wealth for the spotlight. They build it for freedom, for passion, for legacy. They work in silence, they rise in silence, and they win in silence. While the world is busy idolizing the loudest voices, the real architects of quiet revolutions are hidden in boardrooms, factories, farmlands, and digital corners of the world we rarely hear about. These people don't follow conventional rules. In fact, many of them don't even believe in them. They defy the books, they defy the business schools, they defy the expectations placed upon them by society. And that's exactly why they succeed. And it's not luck. It's not born wealth. It's not connections. It's wisdom, unconventional, uncomfortable, often even unexplainable wisdom. You see, success doesn't always look like a $3,000 suit in a corner office. Sometimes it's a t-shirt and a muddy pair of boots. Sometimes it's a retired engineer in a small town who turned a quiet invention into a global patent. Sometimes it's a mother who never finished college, but now owns one of the fastest growing logistics chains in Southeast Asia. They've learned the art of being underestimated. They use simplicity as a weapon. They've mastered the power of patience where others chase speed. They move where there is no noise, and they build in places where the world isn't even looking. These are the billionaires you've never heard of. But their strategies, their philosophies, they hold more truth than a dozen self-help books stacked on your shelf. Because they didn't just chase profits, they pursued meaning. They pursued sustainability. They created their own definitions of success. And that's what I want to tell you today. This world doesn't need more copy-paste entrepreneurs. It needs thinkers, builders, visionaries who are not afraid to walk paths that have no footprints, who are not afraid to build empires out of dust without asking for permission. This is not a lesson in mindset. A mindset built not from Instagram quotes or overnight fame, but from failure, from obscurity, from doubt. A mindset that asks not, oh, what should I do to be successful? But rather, what do I believe that the world hasn't discovered yet? So, if you're tired of following what everyone else is doing, if you feel like your ideas are too different, too strange, too early, if you've been doubted, ignored, or rejected, then you're already closer to greatness than you think. Because in the shadows of silence, wisdom waits. And in the heart of the unknown, true success begins. Let me show you how they did it. Let me give you 6 lessons from billionaires you've never heard of, but should have. Silence is a superpower. Why the loudest person isn't always the smartest. In a world that constantly tells you to speak up, to promote yourself, to grab attention and never let go. Silence becomes a rare art. But here's what many don't realize. The most powerful individuals are often the quietest in the room. They don't need to speak to be heard. They don't need to shout to make an impact. Because their presence, their ideas, and their results speak louder than any words ever could. Let me tell you a story. There was a man who built a multi-billion-dollar empire in the construction industry. You've never seen his face on a magazine cover. He doesn't give flashy interviews. He doesn't even have a verified social media profile. But every major bridge, airport, and highway in his region has his name on the foundation contract. Not because he networked louder than everyone else, but because he mastered the art of silent strategy. When others competed for visibility, he competed for value. While they fought for the stage, he focused on solving problems no one else dared to touch. And while the world praised the loudest voice in the room, he was quietly designing infrastructure that would last generations. That's the power of silence. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means control. It's the ability to listen when everyone else is talking. It's the ability to think deeply when others are reacting emotionally. It's the ability to move intentionally rather than impulsively. You see, most people speak out of fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of not being noticed, fear of irrelevance. But the quiet ones, they're driven by purpose. They don't move because the world tells them to. They move because they know when the time is right. And this is where real intelligence lives. The loudest person in the room often hides the most insecurity. They use volume to mask uncertainty. They speak first to avoid being challenged. But the wisest minds, they observe, they ask, they wait. And then, when they speak, the room stops to listen. Because silence builds curiosity. And curiosity creates leverage. Think about this. In every meeting, there's always that one person who listens more than they talk. They take notes. They ask thoughtful questions. They don't interrupt. They don't dominate. But at the end of the conversation, their words carry more weight than anyone else's. Why? Because silence makes your words rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. Some of the world's most successful billionaires use silence as a strategic advantage. When they walk into negotiations, they don't reveal everything they know. They don't need to. They let the other side speak. They let their competitors show their cards first. That requires depth, stillness, space to think beyond trends, and that only comes when you embrace the silence the world tells you to avoid. I once met a founder who built a global logistics company out of a tiny warehouse. No one believed in his idea because he wasn't loud. He didn't pitch to investors. He didn't post daily updates. He didn't chase clouds. He just quietly delivered results. One client at a time. One route at a time. One warehouse at a time. And when the industry finally noticed him, had already built a supply chain stronger than his loudest competitors. By then, it was too late for them to catch up, because silence gave him speed. Silence gave him focus. Silence gave him freedom from distraction. He told me something I'll never forget. He said everyone's shouting, and because of that, no one's listening. But when you master silence, you hear what others miss. That's where the opportunities are. You don't need to be the loudest. You just need to be the clearest. You don't need to be the center of attention. You just need to be the center of value. And you don't need to prove yourself to the world. You just need to prove yourself to yourself. In the quiet, in the dark, where no one's watching. Because that's where real confidence is built. That's where real intelligence is sharpened. And that's where real success begins. So the next time you feel like you're being overlooked because you're not loud enough, remember this. Lions don't roar before they strike. They watch, they study, they wait. And when the moment is right, they move without warning. Be like that. Let silence be your armor. Let patience be your sword. Let discipline be your crown. And let your results make the noise. Because the loudest person in the room isn't always the smartest, but the quietest one. That's the person you should never underestimate. Profit follows purpose, building wealth by solving real problems. Most people chase money. They wake up every day thinking about numbers, markets, profits, and transactions. But the ones who actually make real wealth, the kind that lasts beyond generations, don't chase meaning. They look for problems, not paychecks. They look for pain points, not applause. And they ask a very different question than most entrepreneurs do. Instead of asking, how can I make more money? They ask, whose problem can I solve better than anyone else? That one shift in thinking is what separates the billionaires you've heard from the billionaires you haven't. See, the ones in the spotlight often have a public image to maintain. They build companies, yes, but they also build brands around themselves. They talk about success as if it's a formula. But the people behind the scenes, the ones you don't see on stage or in documentaries, they don't build for the crowd, they build for the cause. One of the wealthiest men I've ever met owned a chain of medical supply companies. Not glamorous, not flashy, not Silicon Valley. But he was supplying dialysis equipment to remote regions where people were dying because no one thought it was profitable enough to serve them. He didn't just see a business. He saw suffering, and that became his purpose. He said, if you solve something painful, the money becomes a side effect. And he was right. Purpose gives you a direction that profits alone never can. Because profits change. Markets crash. Trends disappear. But purpose, real authentic purpose, becomes your compass when everything else is lost. It's what keeps you moving when there are no results. It's what keeps you building when no one claps. And eventually, it's what makes your work so valuable that the world can't afford to ignore you anymore. The billionaires you've never heard of, they understand this deeply. They don't launch companies just to be rich. They launch them to fix something that bothers them. They don't focus on valuation. They focus on value. And it's because of that mindset that money ends up chasing them, not the other way around. I remember one woman who built $1 billion agricultural technology platform. She started with just one problem. Farmers in her region were going broke because they couldn't predict weather patterns or sell their crops at fair prices. No one wanted to invest in rural tech. It wasn't as sexy. It wasn't as scalable according to investors, but she didn't care. She spent years building data tools for weather, soil, pricing, and logistics. Quietly, slowly, with one farmer at a time. And when the world finally caught up to what she was doing, her company was already serving tens of thousands of families. She didn't follow the market, she created one. That's what purpose does. It makes you unstoppable. Not because you're immune to failure, but because you're not addicted to applause. Most people quit when it gets hard. But when you're working for something bigger than yourself, quitting is no longer an option. Purpose makes you resilient. Profits just make you rich. But purpose, that makes you dangerous to mediocrity. Purpose makes you build better, think longer, sacrifice deeper. And in the end, that kind of work always wins. Because the world will always need real solutions to real problems. Not just another app, not just another influencer, not just another viral trend. And the beautiful irony, when you solve something truly meaningful, the profits follow anyway. Look around at the quiet billionaire, the ones who don't show off, who don't throw parties, who don't scream their success. Their businesses are built around service, around utility, around impact. They're not trying to be famous. They're trying to be useful, and that usefulness becomes their legacy. The problem with chasing money is that it runs faster than you do. But purpose runs with you. It energizes you. It guides you. It shows you opportunities that others are blind to. Because when your mission is rooted in solving pain, you begin to see clearly where the cracks in the system are. And if you're bold enough to fix them, you become irreplaceable. I once heard a mentor say, money is the echo of value. Think about that. Money isn't the voice. It's the echo. It comes after the sound. It comes after the impact, after the usefulness. So if you want to build something powerful, something that lasts, stop obsessing over what you get. Start obsessing over what you give. Find a pain point that makes you angry. Find a problem that keeps you up at night. Find a space where people are suffering silently because the world thinks there's no money to be made. And go there. Build there. Invest your time there. Because in those forgotten corners of society, where purpose lives quietly, wealth is waiting patiently. The billionaires you've never heard of. They didn't ask, how can I make millions? They asked, how can I make something matter? And that made all the difference. Because profits are good, but purpose is better. Profits build businesses, but purpose builds movements. Profits creates change. And when you live in alignment with that truth, you won't just make money. You'll make a mark. Stay local. Think global. The untapped power of hometowns everyone wants to escape. Escape their hometown. Escape their small city. Escape their rural beginnings. They believe that success only lives in skyscrapers, in Silicon Valley, in global headquarters, surrounded by lights, cameras, and billion-dollar valuations. But what if I told you that some of the most powerful billionaires in the world never left their hometowns? What if I told you that your greatest opportunity might not be out there, but right where you are? You see, there's a dangerous lie being sold to dreamers today. That's a matter. You have to move. That greatness only exists in major cities. That the small places where you were born are just stepping stones, never destinations. But those who believe that often miss what's right in front of them. Because in your hometown, there are problems no one else sees. Needs no one else understands. Markets no one else has tapped. And people no one else is serving. The billionaires you've never heard of, they don't always come from big places. In fact, many of them stayed in small towns in forgotten regions, in overlooked industries. Why? Because they understood something most people don't. When you stay close to the problem, you stay close to the opportunity. There's a man in Eastern Europe who became a billionaire by building cold storage units for rural farmers. Not because he had the best technology, not because he had global investors, but because he understood what his community needed. Farmers were losing 40% of their produce every year due to heat and spoilage. So, he built basic, affordable storage that worked in the harshest conditions. No one in New York or London cared. But the people in his village, they paid him with gratitude. And over time, real money. He didn't leave. He leaned in. And that's the power of staying local, while thinking global. When you know your people, you understand their pain better than any outsider ever could. You don't need market research. You are the research. You grew up with the problems. You've lived the gaps. You've felt the frustration. That gives you an advantage no degree, no funding round, no tech incubator can ever replicate. The mistake most people make is abandoning their roots to chase a dream that doesn't belong to them. They get lost in competition, in comparison, in noise. But the quiet billionaires, they dig deeper into their roots. They understand that if you solve a problem for 10 people in your village, you can solve it for 10,000 in your country. And if it works there, it can work globally. But it always starts small, humble, real. There's another story. A woman in Southeast Asia who became one of the wealthiest logistics entrepreneurs in the region. She started by simply organizing reliable transportation for the fishermen in her coastal town. They needed to get their catch to market before it spoiled. There was no system. No technology, just chaos. She created a schedule, then an app, then a network of vehicles. It worked. Then she scaled, quietly, steadily. And today her company moves goods across borders. Because she built trust from the ground up. She didn't try to be famous, she tried to be useful. And that made her indispensable. The secret? She stayed local, but she thought global. She built a model so strong in her village, it became a template for other regions. That's what the smart ones do. They don't ignore their small beginnings. They use them as a laboratory, a testing ground. A foundation. You can experiment more freely in a small town. Fail without headlights, learn without judgment, and build something sustainable before the rest of the world even notices you exist. That's how you win in silence. That's how you grow without pressure. That's how you innovate without distraction. The people who stay grounded build companies that are resilient, not trendy, useful, not flashy, profitable, not performative. Because they're solving real problems for real people. Not chasing likes, not chasing news coverage. And here's the truth the world won't tell you. Big cities don't make big people. Big problems do. And those problems are everywhere, even in your backyard. So instead of asking, how do I leave this place? Ask, what can I build here that no one else sees? Instead of thinking, I need to be in a big market, ask, can I create a market here by solving something real? Instead of following the crowd to opportunity, create opportunity where no one's looking. You don't need the skyline view to change the world. Sometimes, all you need is a dirt road and a clear mission. The billionaires no one knows, they didn't just stay local out of comfort. They stayed because they saw something others didn't. They saw that local markets are the most loyal, that real people don't care about branding. They care about solutions. That when you build something that actually works for your community, the community will build you back. It becomes a cycle of value, of trust, of sustainability. And when you've done that, when your local model is bulletproof, then and only then, you go global. Because now you're not just another startup. You're a tested, proven solution, one that's ready to scale. You don't underestimate the power of where you are. The soil you're standing on might look ordinary, but if you plant the right seed with the right purpose and the right patience, it could grow into something the world has never seen. Stay local, think global, Go build quiet. And let your impact speak louder than your location. Because greatness isn't about where you go, it's about what you grow. Time is the most misunderstood investment. Everyone talks about money, how to earn it, how to save it, how to multiply it. But very few people talk about the one currency more valuable than money. And even fewer understand how to truly invest it. You see, money comes and goes. It can be earned, borrowed, lost, and regained. But time, once it's spent, it's gone, forever. And the billionaires you've never heard of, they understand this better than anyone else. They don't just spend time, they don't even just manage time, they invest it like gold. You might think people who are worth hundreds of millions or billions would be busy 24/7, always rushing, always multitasking, always on. But you'd be wrong. Many of them live like monks with calendars, ruthless about what they allow into their day, relentless about how they protect their minutes. Because they know something most people don't. What you give your time to, you give your life to. There was a quiet billionaire from South America who built a logistics empire. But if you saw his daily routine, you'd be shocked. He worked fewer hours than his managers. He took long walks alone in the mornings. He spent afternoons reading or sketching on whiteboards. He rarely attended meetings unless they were decisive. People asked him why he wasn't busy. And his response, "I'm not in the business of being busy. I'm in the business of making moves that matter." But that's the misunderstood secret. Being busy is not the same as being effective. And that's how most people fail with time. They fill it. They don't invest it. They treat every task as equal, every message as urgent, every invitation as necessary. But the quiet billionaires, they treat time like capital. They spend it on compound results, not quick distraction. They think in decades, not days. They'd rather spend 3 hours thinking deeply than 30 hours reacting to chaos. And the result? They build things that last. Because time doesn't just measure your life. It shapes it. What you prioritize becomes your personality. What you repeat becomes your reality. The mistake most people make is waiting for time to free up. But time never frees itself. You have to take it back. Reclaim it like land. Guard it like treasure. And this is where the billionaires you've never heard of operate differently. They don't wake up scrolling. They wake up designing their days, their decisions, their direction. They don't just let life happen, they architect it. And they understand that the greatest wealth-building activity isn't always a financial one. It's a temporal one. Let me explain. There's a man in Northern Africa who became a billionaire through vertical farming. He didn't know anything about stocks or venture capital, but he knew time. He spent years studying climate patterns, soil behavior, crop cycles, and regional logistics. Not on a screen, but in the fields. He spent his time mastering what others were outsourcing. And when it came time to scale, he wasn't guessing. He was ready. Because while others were chasing speed, he was preparing with depth. He once said, "It's not how fast you go, it's how right you go." And that truth applies everywhere. If you want to build something truly great, something that lasts beyond fads, beyond quarterly numbers, beyond social media impressions, you need to stop asking, "How long will it take?" and start asking, "How much of me am I willing to put in consistently over time?" Because time is the soil of greatness, and most people are planting fast seeds in shallow dirt, hoping for deep roots. That doesn't work like that. Think about it. If you invest time into learning a skill that no one can take from you, like negotiation, strategy, leadership, or engineering, those hours multiply for the rest of your life. But if you spend those same hours binge watching trends or reacting to notifications, you've gained nothing but noise. The billionaires you don't know, they're invisible not because they're slow, but because they're intentional. They don't post every move. They don't jump at every shiny opportunity. They don't chase trends, they create timelines. And timelines require patience, discipline, delayed gratification. There's a dangerous culture now that glorifies a grind, as if sleeping less and hustling 18 hours a day is a badge of honor. But the billionaires who last, the ones who stay rich, not just get rich, they understand the body is part of the business. One quiet billionaire I know takes 3-4 days off every week, not for laziness, but for vision. He spends time with his family. He hikes. He journals. He thinks deeply about the long term. He told me, I want sprinting to be first. I'm walking to be forever. And that's it. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most, more often. Time is the only resource every human being gets equally. Billionaire or broke, you get 24 hours a day. The difference isn't the number of hours, it's the intention behind them. So if you want to follow in the footsteps of the billionaires, no one talks about, don't just chase opportunities. Chase clarity. Don't just chase action. Chase alignment. And don't just chase results. Chase rituals that build those results over time. Because your calendar reveals your character. Your schedule reveals your soul. And how you spend your time is how you spend your life. Invest it like it matters because it does. Ignore trends. Trust timing, the art of being unfashionably early in a world obsessed with trends. Going against the crowd feels like walking alone in a storm. When everyone is chasing the next big thing, AI, crypto, NFTs, social apps, virtual reality, it's easy to feel like if you're not part of the wave, you'll be crushed by it. But here's the truth the loud world won't tell you. Trends are noise, timing is the signal. And the billionaires you've never heard of, they don't follow fashion. They follow timing. They're not late. They're not trendy. They're unfashionably early, on purpose. See, there's a difference between jumping on a moving train and building the tracks years before the train even exists. That's what these quiet billionaires do. They don't ride waves. They study the tides. They spend years watching, learning, preparing, while everyone else is chasing whatever's hot at the moment. Most people think they're being smart by joining the next big thing early. But what they don't realize, by the time a trend reaches the masses, the real opportunity is already gone. It was captured long ago by the ones who weren't trying to look smart but who were patient enough to be right. Let me tell you a story. There was a man in Eastern Europe who started building digital payment systems in the early 2000s. No one cared. Banks laughed at him. Investors ignored him. People said, we already have cash. Why would we ever need a phone to pay for things? But he didn't care. He wasn't chasing the market. He was preparing for when the market would wake up. 10 years later, when mobile payments exploded globally, he was already years ahead. His infrastructure was built. His partnerships were in place. His platform was ready. And while the world scrambled to catch up, he quietly became a billionaire because he didn't follow the trend. He trusted the timing. Most people make decisions based on what's popular. But billionaires who operate in the shadows, they make decisions based on what's inevitable. And that's the key. They're not predicting trends. They're studying patterns. Human behavior, economic cycles, industry gaps. They see what's missing, and then they build in silence. They don't wait for the world to believe. They build until the world has no choice but to believe. It's not luck. It's preparation. It's the willingness to look stupid for years while building something no one understands. Yet, that's what being unfashionably early means. You might get mocked, you might be lonely, you might even doubt yourself at times. But if your intuition is clear, your observation is sharp, and your preparation is real, your timing will beat any trend. Because trends are built on hype, timing is built on truth. Think about the people who bought Bitcoin in 2010, not because it was trending, but because they understood decentralized systems. Think about the people who started e-commerce platforms when the internet was still dial-up. Think about the people who invested in water purification when everyone else was building dating apps. They were ridiculed. They were questioned. But they weren't wrong, they were just early. And there's power in being early. You get more room to experiment, more space to fail. More time to build without the pressure of the spotlight. Because once the trend arrives, competition explodes. Noise increases. Margins shrink. But when you're early, you own the foundation. You set the rules. You're not competing. You're leading quietly from the shadows. One quiet billionaire I met built his fortune in agricultural robotics. Not today. Not last year. He started in 2004. Everyone told him machines could never replace hands in farming. Everyone said the economics didn't make sense. But he ignored the opinions. He trusted the timing. He saw water scarcity coming. He saw labor shortages rising. He saw automation as a necessity, not a luxury. And now, his machines are feeding entire nations, not because he followed the trend, but because he timed it perfectly. You don't need to be part of the hype to win. You need to see what comes after the hype and prepare for that. The mistake most people make is thinking success comes from being loud at the right moment. But true success, it comes from being silent at the right preparation point. Doing the unsexy work, studying the boring problems, solving what nobody else cares about. Yeah. The world will always reward the bold, but it will multiply rewards for the early. So if you're working on something no one understands, if your idea seems too early for the market, if people are telling you to quit and to go where the money is, good. That means you're not following the noise. But that means you're paying attention to timing, and timing is everything. Because money chases momentum, but legacy chases leverage. And leverage is built when you invest in something before the crowd sees its value. That's how the unknown billionaires made it. They ignored the headlines. They built during silence. They trusted the tick of the clock more than the sound of the crowd. So don't just chase what's trending. Chase what's true, what's inevitable, what's missing. And have the patience to be laughed at, because one day when the world catches up, they won't be laughing. They'll be learning from you. You don't need to be first, you need to be right. There's this myth in the world of business that if you're not first, you've already lost. That if someone else started before you, claimed the space before you, launched the product before you, then there's no point in even trying that belief. It's not just wrong, it's dangerous. Because the truth is, you don't need to be first, you just need to be right. And the billionaires you've never heard of, they understand this better than anyone else. They're not the pioneers, they're the perfecters. They don't rush to break news. They wait to break models. They don't panic when a competitor launches before them. They watch, they study, they improve. Because being first gives you attention, but being right gives you control. Let me tell you a story. There was a man in Southeast Asia who started an e-commerce platform years after the giants had already dominated scene. People laughed. You're too late, they said. The market is already saturated. And they were right. If you looked on the surface, but he saw something deeper. He noticed that rural sellers had no real tools to manage logistics. He noticed that small-town buyers were being underserved. He didn't try to copy the big players. He focused on what they missed. He perfected the back end, simplified the seller onboarding, built trust where others ignored. And in 5 years, his company became the #1 platform in remote regions, outperforming the giants in territories they thought they owned. Not because he was first, but because he was right. You see, rushing to be first often leads to shortcuts. People launch half-baked ideas just to grab attention. They raise funding before they raise clarity. They go fast, but without focus. And when that happens, cracks form, gaps appear, and that's where the quiet billionaires strike. They don't build first, they build better. Being first isn't a business strategy. It's an ego trap. It makes you reactive, not reflective. It makes you loud, not wise. It forces you to chase speed, not strength. But when you aim to be right, your mindset changes. You obsess over being solid. You ask harder questions. You iterate longer. You wait until your solution is so strong, the market doesn't just accept it. It needs it. There's a woman in South America who became a billionaire in digital education. But she didn't create the first platform. She didn't build the flashiest app. She didn't raise millions of dollars. She waited. She found that none of the existing platforms were addressing the needs of rural teachers who lacked proper connectivity, content structure, and local language support, so she built something simple, quiet, effective. And when governments began looking for scalable education solutions, they came to her because she didn't rush to win the race. She positioned herself to finish it. That's the key. Being first is like sprinting in the fog. You might get ahead, but you might also fall hard. Being right is like walking with the compass, slower, yes, but every step is aligned with where you actually want to go. And here's something most people never consider. The first mover often makes the most mistakes. They spend the most money educating the market. They take the biggest hits from early failure. They open the door. But the second mover, the third mover, the quiet mover, wisdom, they move in with answers, not questions. With refinement, not ego. With clarity, not chaos. And the market rewards that. It's why Apple didn't invent the smartphone, but perfected it. It's why Facebook didn't create social networking, but scaled it better. It's why McDonald's wasn't the first fast food joint or became the most recognized. Because in business, precision beats speed. Speed beats noise. And being right beats being first. The billionaires you've never heard of, they've mastered this. They don't let urgency rush them into action. They let strategy pull them into alignment. They take longer to launch, but when they do, it lands like thunder. Because every piece has been thought through, every corner polished, every flaw addressed. And when the world sees what they've built, they don't care that someone else did it first. They care that this one works better. So if you're sitting on an idea that someone else has already started, don't panic. Don't scrap your vision. Don't fall into the trap of speed. Refine it, sharpen it, find what they missed. Build it better. Build it stronger. Build it so clearly that being second doesn't matter, because your version wins. You don't need to be the first light in the sky. You just need to shine with it. Because when you're right, truly right, the world won't ask who came before you. It'll ask, where were you this whole time? And your answer, building something worth the wait. The quiet path to greatness. So now you've heard the truth. The world is full of loud success stories. Viral headlines, screaming entrepreneurs, spotlight-driven founders trying to convince you that visibility equals value. But the ones who built quietly? The ones who moved with depth instead of noise, who chased purpose instead of clout, who mastered silence, timing, patience, and precision. Those are the ones who last. They don't shout. They don't beg to be seen. They let their impact speak. They knew that you don't need to be first. You just need to be right. You don't need to follow the trend. You just need to know the time. You don't need to leave your town. You just need to solve something real. This is the unconventional wisdom no one teaches, because it's not flashy, it's not viral, but it works. And it lasts. So don't worry if the world doesn't see you right now. Don't panic if you're not on the cover. Don't rush to shout your worth. Think, serve, solve, refine. And when it's time, they'll come looking for you. Because true greatness doesn't need an audience to begin. It just needs you, quietly committed, unshakably patient, and relentlessly right.